Shalom, shalom. All praise to the Most High for another day. The name of Yahweh Shah. Right. Today we gonna go into the same topics, part two. I'm just waiting for people to come in. Give people a couple of more minutes. Let me pin the link on top as well. For those on Clubhouse, as always, if you want to join the YouTube to see the visuals, the link is on top. But as always, you're always welcome to listen on Clubhouse as well. So we're gonna get started in a few minutes. Just setting everything up, making sure everything is good. All right. We got it. So again, all praise to the Most High for another day, right? Another day of life, another day to get right. Today we're gonna go into part two of Native Americans, Latinos being Israelites, and we're gonna do something new today. And I'm gonna start this as a segment, just addressing topics, addressing doctrines in general, addressing certain things that people may say, right? Because it's important for the edification of the people, right? So before we get into it, we're gonna get ahead and do the introduction on YouTube, and then we'll get straight into the class. Right. That'll allow people to come in, give people a couple more minutes to come in. So in the meantime, let's do the introduction. Let's get it.
They hating on camps, acting like women with periods and cramps, but can never do what we do. It was never a part of the Most High's plan, so I understand that you as a man got a lot to go with the baby steps. You see me militant in every step, from state to state, I see him progress. Israelites coming through. Yeah, you feel the respect, so who is you testing? You're missing your blessings. They hating so hard, you're missing the lessons. I'm aiming the Western. And all of the clans and all of their crews, avenging the bruise, they hunger slew. A message to heathens, we coming for you. I think to myself, why have compassion when I see their actions? They laughing at us and they glad they have us at the bottom, scrapping for the crunch for master. Broke the chains, now we calling our nation back to repentance, back to their essence, back to Yahweh, back to his laws and commandments. They want to be us, but they can't. The wise grow when the seed is planted, go study the ants. The way they gather together and work as a team, I should all of my team. Extra clip with the beam. Niggas are selling their dream like they're making a scene. Always in drama, but not taking care of these seeds. But part of the game is that. Back in the days that would've got checked, now they cut them a check. To turn their backs and honor, respect, and morals. Don't believe what they tell you, do your due diligence. Mix intelligence with the elegance. When you do, someone consider it arrogant. I'm giving you game to put it in play. I'm feeling the rage of people enslaved. The cancerous world we see today is already written, it's part of the phase. But don't be phased, gotta be strong in this faith. Gotta continue and pray and fast in the love, cause I'm never cleaving to hate. Israel only, don't get it twisted. The other nations is on my hit list. I know they be mad whenever I spit this, but I hate them with a perfect hatred. Yeah, I rep the poor, so I'm riding for them. Anything else, I call it a sin. I shoot for the stars and aim to win. Shoot for the stars and aim to win. Shoot for the stars and aim to win. Anything else, I call it a sin. I shoot for the stars and aim to win. Tell them we ready for war, ready for war. Yeah, we ready for war. Tell them we ready for war, ready for war. Yeah, we ready for war. Tell them we ready for war, ready for war. Yeah, we ready for war. Tell them we ready for war, ready for war. Yeah, we ready for war.
right? For a lot of people, my bad for those on YouTube, I was muted. For a lot of people, they might have the same mindset as others, right, concerning doctrine. So our job as Israelites is to confront these doctrines, address it, answer it, and, give answers to the questions, because other people may have the same questions, right? So once again, we're going to do something new today. I'm going to share my screen. For those on Clubhouse, you can follow on YouTube to see the visual. I'm going to share my screen right now, and we're going to get straight into the slides. All right, so the first slide I want to get into is what I'm talking about, right? So as I make these topics, I notice that when we bring out Native Americans, Latinos being Israelites, it's a big controversy. There's a lot of feedback, a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about, a lot of people that did their research and can actually figure out what I'm talking about, right? So that's what we're here to address, right? Let's go to the first slide to see what I'm talking about. So answering the fool according to their folly. Sometimes we got to do that. Sometimes we got to do that for the edification of the people, because once again, people might have the same mind frame, especially brothers and sisters coming new into this truth, right? They might see certain things, might be discouraged, or might not know the information, so they get stuck. So the Bible says what? This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 26 and verse 5. It says, answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit. So we got to do that sometimes, brothers and sisters. As much as we want to ignore, all of the folly altogether, as much as you want to say, listen, man, it's all good. People don't agree. Keep it moving. Sometimes you just got to answer a fool according to the folly. Sometimes you got to answer foolishness. Because guess what? When we go out there and teach in the streets, we got our people thinking the same thing. They're indoctrinated. So we got to make sure that we cleanse their mind, right, by, giving them knowledge, and they can renew their minds, right? They can renew their spirit. And so they're able to stand concrete on the scriptures and on history, right? Because that's another thing we're going to get into today as well, more history. Now, to those that was in the First Academy of Lines of Israel, you might have seen these slides already, but since it's being made available to the public now, it might be new to a lot of people, right? So let's get into the first slide. So if you go back to my first part, right, the part 1 of the video, which is Native Americans, Latinos are Israelites, part 1, you'll see some comments, right? You'll see some comments. Some people disagree, some people agree, so on and so forth. But my thing is addressing doctrines. That's what this is about, right? So one of the people that commented, I have him on the screen if y'all see it, right? He said a couple of things. And so for those that commented, that disagreed, and you're not up on the screen, that means that it was too much of a foolery to even answer, right? The previous verse says, answer not a fool according to the folly. Some folly you just don't answer at all. So if you didn't make the folly list, you got to do better next time, right? So this guy, he made a comment. So we're going to go straight to the comments. One of the things he says is, this is a joke, but please humor me with responses to the following questions and comments. Number 1, it's not just slavery, it's chattel slavery. So one of the things that I've noticed is that people don't watch the full video. People don't actually sit there and take their time and watch from beginning to end, absorb the information, study it, go research it, and then refute it. They'll go straight into what they believe, maybe 2 or 3 minutes into the video, and skip the whole hour and a half regarding the information coming out. So in part 1, in Native Americans, Latinos, and Israelites, we went over the kinds of slavery that the Native Americans and Latinos went through. And we see that it was chattel slavery. We were sold. We were personal possessions to slave masters. It was legal and documented, right? We see that. So let's get the very definition of chattel, right? It means a personal possession. We were personal possessions to who? To slave masters. If you didn't see part 1, go watch part 1. I'm not doing it all over again. That's the whole point of, doing videos. If you disagree, you can go back to the video and disagree with the points being brought out. Address that specifically, right? When you look at the bottom at Merriam-Webster dictionary, at the definition of chattel, it means what? An enslaved person held as the legal property of another bondman. Okay, so that's the other definition, being legal property of another. Right? In my last class, we went over how it was legal to sell Native Americans and Latinos throughout the four corners of the earth. The very same places that they were shipped to was also brought out in the last class. But once again, you got to go back to that if you didn't see it. Right? Let's go to the next slide. So now we see that off the first point, he didn't watch the video. He didn't take his time, take notes, and then rebuttal. Right? He went head first like a chicken with his head cut off. So that's point number one addressed. Let's go to the next slide. The enslavement of so-called Native Americans, Latinos started off legal. They didn't come over here and say, hey, listen, we need documentation for this and that. Right? They started off just doing it. And to them, it was right in their eyes. Right? The Europeans, it was right for them to enslave us. So on top of that, there are documentations, records, shipping records, and other documents that show proof of this chattel slavery. So there was actual records of slaves being shipped off individually. There was actual records of slaves being sold. Okay, and I showed that. Reading on, it says, much later, their enslavement became legal, but continued anyway. So just like the so-called Negroes, right? They enslaved our brothers and sisters, brought them from the west coast of Africa to the Americas. And then later on, they legalized it, but they still participated in their enslavement. The same thing that happened to us. Okay, so that's the first point addressed. Let's go to the next slide. The second part of this point says it's not just slavery or it's chattel slavery. It's the scattering of the people from one end of the globe to the other. Clearly, he did not watch part one. Clearly. You a truth seeker, but you only chose to seek 2 minutes of the video. Now, what do you see on the right? I went over this in my previous video. It says Native Americans / Latinos were routinely shipped to Barbados, Bermuda, Jamaica, the Azores, Spain, Tangier, and North Africa, the Caribbean islands such as Puerto Rico, Cuba, Peru, Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, Dominican Republic, Hispaniola, Chile, Brazil. I mean, different parts of the Americas, North, Central, and South. Does that not sound like the four corners to you? And this is not this person directly, right? Because it's anybody that thinks this way or agrees with this doctrine. Because it's not just him. So this is a general, for lack of better terms, PSA, public service announcement, right? It's not just for him directly. So you see that we were shipped to all these different places. That seems like the end of the earth to me. Spain is all the way in the east. We were also shipped to Italy. That's all the way in the east. So yes, that is the four corners of the earth. Okay, from one end of the globe to the other. Next point. It's the affliction, oppression without reparations for 400 years. Okay, so according to that statement, when I first read it, I knew that there's people out there that believe in the 400-year prophecy. After 400 years of slavery, starting in 1619, then the Most High is going to send Yahushua to come take us and bring us back to Jerusalem. So you got people that believe that, and he is one of them, right? But just generally, people believe that as well. So let's go over it. He brought out the book of Genesis chapter 15. Okay, it says, and he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. So you already seen that he's connecting America to Genesis 15 and adding that 400 years, right? Reading on, verse 14, and also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward they shall come out with great substance. So now, 400 years is key. Why? Because that's what they believe the prophecy of Yahushua coming back is going to take place after 400 years, right? So when you see the highlighted part on the bottom, he says, I'm not even going to ask about the Latinos and Native Americans being strangers in the land that's not theirs, since you are saying that America and Latin America are the original lands. I never said that, but before I go on to that point, let's address the 400 years. Now, he's connecting again the 400 years in Genesis 15 to America. Let's go to this website real quick, right? Let's take a look at this article. Because in order for that prophecy to come to pass, the math got to math, right? And from the corner of the research, the math ain't mathing. It ain't adding up, right? So, which one is the link I want? Let me see. All right, so if you see on the screen, I got this article, right? So I scrolled down because I want key points. Now, a lot of people use that 400 years and start at the year 1619. I mean, it's been 400 years, nothing happened yet. So let's read this article. Africans had a notable presence in the Americas before colonization. Prior to 1619, hundreds of thousands of Africans, both freed and enslaved, aided the establishment and survival of colonies in the Americas and the New World. They also fought against European oppression and in some instances hindered the systematic spread of colonization. Christopher Columbus likely transported the first Africans to the Americas in the late 1490s on his expeditions to the island of Hispaniola. And who we have in Hispaniola, so-called Dominican Republic and Haiti now? We have so-called Dominicans and so-called Haitians, right? So the ones being transported here we can read is the so-called Haitians. So Christopher Columbus likely transported the first Africans to the Americas in the late 1490s on his expeditions to the islands of Hispaniola, now Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. Their exact status, whether free or enslaved, remains disputed, but the timeline fits what we know the origins of the slave trade. Reading on, European trade of enslaved Africans. Now, we know when they say Africans, it's not talking about actual Africans. It's talking about the so-called Negroes, African Americans, Jamaicans, and Haitians, right? It's not talking about the actual people of Ham, the actual Africans, okay? So European trade of enslaved Africans began in the 1400s. The first example we have of Africans being taken against their will and put on board European ships would take the story back to 1441, says Guasco, when the Portuguese captured 12 Africans in Cabo Branco, modern-day Mauritania in North Africa, and brought them to Portugal as enslaved peoples. See, that's so the enslavement of the so-called blacks started way before 1619. Way before. So if you start in your dates off in 1619 to try to make the 4-year 100 prophecy of Genesis 15 equate to America, then you got problems. Your calculator's messed up. You might have multiplied or divided. Something went wrong. Right? Reading on. In the region that would become the United States, there were no enslaved Africans before the Spanish occupation of Florida in the early 16th century, according to Linda Haywood and John Thornton, professors at Boston University and co-authors of Central Africans, Atlantic Creoles, and the Foundation of the Americas, right? Reading on. There were significant numbers who were brought in as early as 1526. That's before 1619. Right? Says Haywood. That year, some of these enslaved Africans became part of a Spanish expeditions to establish an outpost in what is now South Carolina. They rebelled, preventing the Spanish from founding the colony. Okay, let's go more down to some more key points. But you see that the whole point is slavery for the so-called blacks did not start in 1619. Okay, it did not. It's the general consensus and generally accepted right? Because by that time, the slavery became more famous, but it didn't start there. Okay, reading on, it says, the uprising didn't stop the inflow of enslaved Africans to Spanish Florida. We don't know how many followed, but there was certainly a slave population around St. Augustine, says Haywood. Let's see. Because we already got the point, but it goes probably a little more into it, I believe. Let's see. Okay, that matter of fact, I think that's what I want right there. This last part. So it says, quote, there were significant numbers who were brought in as early as 1526, says Haywood, right? So we stop in there because the whole point of bringing out this article was to let you know. And there's sources, right? I got much more sources, but it's not enough time to bring all the sources out, right? So I'll do that maybe in part 3 or 4. So we see that slavery for the so-called blacks, once again, did not start in 1619. It started much earlier. By 1619, it just became famous and America was just forming itself. Right? So that's that point addressed. Let's close this out. So if anybody is believing that 400-year prophecy, there's a flaw in that. Right? Get a new calculator. Right? They taught you in school not to use a calculator, but damn it, you need one. Right? Let's go to the next slide. So on the same point, okay, well, going down, when you see the bottom, the dude said, since yours, I'm not even going to ask about the Latinos and Native Americans being strangers in a land that's not theirs, since you are saying that America and Latin America are the original lands. Now, brothers and sisters, where in my last video did I say that this is our original land? I never said that. I don't teach that. Right? Were we here? Yes. Is this our original land? No. So as you read on the slide, it says, I never stated that America is the original land of the Native Americans / Latinos. However, as the 10 tribes of Israel, we inhabited this land after we left Assyria, according to the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 13, verse 40 through 41, which states, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, who Salmanassar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. The same way the so-called Native Americans, Latinos came over here to the Americas and the Caribbeans, we came into another land. This is not our homeland, though. Reading on, verse 41. But they took this counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where mankind never dwelt. Our homeland is Israel, not America. So I never stated in my last video or any of my videos that this is our homeland here in America. So you got a lot of more watching and doing the videos, right? As well as those that is agreeing with him without watching the full video. You got maybe an hour and a half to watch. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So this person is referencing the land that's not theirs because they believe Genesis 15 verses 13 through 14 is talking about America. But the prophecy of 400 years is yet to be seen, especially with 1619 not being the year slavery started. Okay, so we went over that already. What's the next thing I say? What steps are you leaving with? Everything will be burning up. Right? Because the last part of his sentence was, are they going to come out with great substance? And my question is, if Babylon's going to be burnt up, what great substance you leaving with? Right? So that's a question for you. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. His second point, the people of Yah lost all their land, not just the portion, which is why there are prophecies to return to their land in the last days. I agree. Right? We already cleared that up, that America is not the homeland of the Native Americans or Latinos. It was a land of refugee. We just read 2nd Ezra 13. So yes, we will be going back to our land. Right? When you look at the word refugees, what does it mean? Refugees are people who have fled war, violence, conflict, or persecution and have crossed an international border to find safety in another country. So America was the land of our refugee. Right? Because what happened? If you don't know the history, we were fleeing what? Assyrian persecution. That's why we said what? We made a counsel to leave the multitude of the heathens. So we refugees in this land. We inhabited this land. Yes. We knew about this land, so we came over here. When you look at history, this land was never occupied. That's another thing I'm getting into. Okay? So we were refugees. We fled the Syrian captivity. We fled persecution. We fled war. We fled violence or conflict. And we inhabited a land where mankind never dwelt. Okay? So I never said, once again, America is our homeland. Now, he posted scriptures there. I'm not even going to address it because I agree we are going back to our homeland, which is Jerusalem. Okay? So let's go to the next slide. The next thing he says is, so are the Latinos and Native Americans unaware of their native lands, languages, and culture? No. They know where they originate from. Listen, I mean, if you know, you know. This is like, it's foolish, right? But we got to answer a fool according to their folly. Right? That's my new thing now. You know what I mean? And we got that's a series I'm going to start doing for people that make foolish comments, but it has to be addressed because people might believe this stuff. You know how many people see the simplest doctrine and believe it? For example, the law is done away with. You would think they solid in the truth, and yet still 2 or 3 years or 4 years later down the line, nah, I don't got to keep the laws no more. It's the same thing with everything else. So he's saying that we're aware of our history, right? In fact, the Native Americans and Latinos do not know their origins before the Americas. You ask Latinos and Native Americans, where do you originate from before the Americas? I don't know. See, we go to camps. So I don't know about y'all. We go to camps. So when we ask Latinos and Native Americans at camp, face to face, they don't know nothing. They lost their history. You could tell that, you know, a lot of them don't even know that they were here in the Americas as well. Right? Coming over here from the East. They don't know that. They just know, well, my parents grew up in Mexico and, you know, I'm Mexican. Or my parents grew up in Puerto Rico and I'm just Puerto Rican. That's just an example. That's how they see it. So a large number do not even know they were once enslaved. You tell Latino Americans, yo, you know you was once slaves here in America, right? You know you was chained up. You know you was being sold. You know you got brought on cargo slave ships. They're not aware of that. They don't know that. You obviously have not had conversations with us. Right? When I say us, I'm talking about the 10 tribes. You have not had conversations with the so-called Latinos and natives. You have not been around them. I don't know what's going on. And you definitely didn't watch my video. Right? So reading on, it says, a large number do not even know they were once enslaved, stripped of their culture, identity, and language. Example, what were Native Americans and Latinos originally called before colonization? Before 1492 to be exact. Native American is English. Latinos, right? It comes from they want to make it Spanish today. Right? Latino. Yo soy Latino. Yo soy Latina. These are both new languages. So what was the original language before colonization? Another thing, is English and Spanish the languages they originally spoke? Because if not, then we have a problem with your doctrine. That means that they don't know their original language. The next thing, how did they get to the Caribbeans? How did they get there? And don't tell, don't tell me the DNA of Japeth, because you don't got Japheth's DNA to compare the Native Americans, right, DNA to. You haven't searched too much into the Bering Strait theory, which is just a theory that's been debunked, and I'm going to debunk it as well in the upcoming series, right? That's been crushed. Especially using logic and living conditions. Nobody would be able to survive, but that's another topic. Within the same topic, so to say. So how did they get to the Caribbeans? How did we get our modern names? What was America called before it got its name? See, these are key questions you have to know before you make a statement like we know where we come from or originate from. We didn't lose our language or our culture. That's a foolish comment. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So that also goes on to the next part of the comment, which he says part of the curses is loss of identity, including language and culture. We lost that. Where did the word Mexican come from? Right? Where did the word Puerto Rican come from? Where did the word Dominican come from? All of that. Let's go to the next slide. So let's go into the language. Now, again, those that was in the academy in the lands of Israel with the first academy, we went over this already, but to the public, it may be new to y'all, right? Let's go to this video and see what this Edomite says, right? This European, this so-called white man. Let's see what he says about the findings of Hebrew language within Native Americans. Let's see what he says.
In 1860, David Wyrick, he's a guy who surveyed the Newark earthworks. He was digging into a mound near those earthworks, and he found a wooden coffin made of oak. They opened up the coffin and found a skeleton of a man holding a little box. It was about 8.10 inches in size. The box had been cemented shut here. This, by the way, is sitting in Ohio. Well, he opened up the box and he found a little man inside, a little black stone. They took it to scholars and they looked at it. The man seems to be carrying something, and there's writing here. At first, they couldn't recognize. The writing is, they thought in 1860, some sort of Hebrew. Well, finally, about 20 years later, they found some rabbis living in the area, and the rabbis looked at that, and they could read it. They said it was an old kind of block Hebrew, and it was a rendition of the Ten Commandments. Now,
see that? So, I mean, do you see Latinos and Native Americans by and large now speaking Hebrew? No, because we lost that language. What is artifacts in Hebrew being found here in America for? If they had no connection to being an Israelite or no connection to the language. And you know what's crazy? You know, our people, we should know better, man, right? But it's a shame that sometimes our enemies can come to us with information that will shut down a simple doctrine as some of our brothers and sisters may believe, right? Because when you got the proof in your face, you can't deny it. And if you don't believe this to be a Hebrew stone, you got to refute that, right? You can't make a comment in the comment section disagreeing and you can't refute this information being brought forth. So let's go. Let's play the video. Let's keep playing the video.
this is another piece. Block Hebrew. They said they'd never seen anything like it. Mainstream archaeologists at the time called this a hoax. But then in 1900, or just about after 1900, in Israel, they found the same block-style Hebrew writing. Mainstream archaeologists still dismiss the findings. They found it in Israel, and they found
See that? So those dismissing the findings sound like a lot of people in the comment section. I don't want to deal with that. We're going to dismiss that. That's a forgery. That's not true, right? But they can't disprove the information. And what you'll notice about these Hebrew stones that's been found, in order to dismiss it, you'll hear a lot of historians say that was forgery, or it was tampered with, or the person that actually seen it and found it, they made it up. And that's about every single stone that they found. Every single stone. Every Hebrew inscription, there's always historians trying to dismiss it because they don't want the truth to come out. Let's keep playing it.
But there was another stone that they found that they couldn't argue. This is the Bat Creek stone. It was found during the course of an official Smithsonian evacuation. The Smithsonian didn't understand the meaning of the writing on the stone. They thought it was Cherokee since it came from Cherokee country. They didn't realize that it's actually Hebrew. They had published this originally upside down. They threw it in a box at the bottom of the Smithsonian, put it in the basement. Many years later, a scholar took it out of the box, looked at it, and went, oh my gosh.
And another thing too, a lot of times when they put things in the box, that means they want to hide it. They don't revisit it. They don't say, yo, let's take this out and display it in the museum. They hide it. They hide these findings. Why? Because when you put the pieces to the puzzle together, we are those 10 tribes of Israel. And if that's the case, that's a problem for a lot of people that claim to be Jews or just the agenda in general. Let's keep playing it.
It's upside down. It's Phoenician, ancient Hebrew. So what's going on here? What is that about?
What's going on?
Where is that history?
Where is it?
I'll show you in a few minutes, and we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to show you some more things that the Smithsonian, science, government, commerce colluded to erase.
So it's an agenda to even erase these findings. Why is that? See, and this is where the curses also come into play, right? Because the Lord said that he shall break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. So this whole thing about, the separation stuff, it's prophetic. It's prophetic. And therefore, when we see it, we know the Most High, his word is true, right? We know his word is true because we see it. We see it manifest. But once again, guess what? The information got to come out, right? So we're gonna address it. So here we are. We've seen the video of Hebrew stones being found, right? Let's go to the next slide. Now let's read it, right? The Native Americans spoke Hebrew, the Bat Creek inscription. That's what he just brought out. The Bat Creek inscription is an inscribed stone tablet found by John W. Emmer on February 14th, 1889. Emmer claimed to have found the tablet in Tipton, Mount 3, during an excavation of Hopewell's Mounds in London County, Tennessee. In the late 19th century, when the tablet was found, Cyrus Thomas, the director of the mound excavations, concluded the inscription presented letters from the Cherokee alphabet. Right? And I got to get this video because this is Cherokee woman. She breaks down how they still use Hebrew to this day. Right? I believe Cherokee means something to the extent referencing the Most High Yah. Right? I got to go back and check that. But they still have preserved Hebrew language within their culture. So it's not completely wiped away, but as part of the curses, by and large, yes, it was wiped away because we was prophesied to lose our culture. So reading on, this interpretation was accepted at the time, but was contested by a century later by Cyrus H. Gordon, a scholar of Near Eastern cultures and ancient languages, who re-examined the tablet in 1970s and proposed that the inscription represented Paleo-Hebrew of the 1st or 2nd century. So this is one of the oldest forms of Hebrew that they found. Lets you know what? That, we was over there in the East before we came to the West. If the case was that we was always here and we was never in the East, then we would have had our own language, our own tongue. But guess what? We are the children of Israel. We're the 10 tribes. As much as people try to deny it, that's who we are. Let's go to the next slide. Right? The Los Lunas, right? They got the Los Lunas Decalogue stone. Now, Deuteronomy 28:49, it says, the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Why? Because Christopher Columbus spoke Spanish. He needed a Hebrew interpreter to interpret what the natives were speaking to him. Why? Because we were speaking Hebrew. We wasn't speaking Spanish or English. So reading the article, it says the Los Lunas Decalogue stone is a large boulder on the side of Hidden Mountain near Los Lunas, New Mexico, about 35 miles south of Albuquerque, that bears a very spectacular inscription carved into a flat panel. The stone is also known as the Los Lunas Mystery Stone or Commandment Rock, because the commandments was upon it. The stone is controversial in that some claim the inscription is pre-Columbian, and therefore proof of early Semitic contact with the Americas. You see that? So the proof is in the pudding, brothers and sisters. It's right in our faces. Reading on. The first recorded mention of the stone is in 1993 when Professor Frank Hibben, an archaeologist from the University of New Mexico, saw it. According to a 1996 interview, Hibben was convinced the inscription is ancient and this is authentic. This Paleo-Hebrew script closely related to the Phoenician script. Now, I forgot to mention, too, the reporter that we just heard bring out this information. He got fired after that. He got fired after he brought out that information. I mean, they Kyried him, right? Or they tried to Kanye him, which they did. They canceled him. He brought out this information. They said, oh, hell no, you got to take this dude out. Put somebody else in there. Because you can see in his spirit, he was so appalled. He was like, wow, this is a great piece of information, as we should cherish it the same way. Because it is a great piece of information to know who the lost tribes are. We can't be biased in our approach. We can't just believe what we want to believe and say, you know what, let's ignore all these facts. I'm just going to stick with the Bering Strait theory. That's simplicity. That's foolery. And that's why we're answering the fool according to his folly. Let's go to the next slide. So I brought this book out before. Now, in the next series, I'm going to go way more into this book, because this book, if y'all get it, read it before me, all praises. That shows y'all studying and researching. But for those that don't want to go by the book and still want to disagree, this book actually brings out, too, how the natives was keeping Passover. How the hell were they keeping Passover? They didn't know nothing about no Israelite culture. They not Israelites. What were they doing keeping the feast days? And I got 10 more books on that, right? But I'm gonna leave some of the joints for the academy, right? In the academy, we're gonna go in, and this information, after that will be brought forth, right? But anyway, so this book is called The 10 Tribes of Israel, or the True History of the North American Indians, showing that they are the descendants of these 10 tribes, right? By Timothy R. Jenkins. Let's go to the next slide. So even in the preface, you read, many years ago, the attention of the compiler of the following pages was first called to subject by hearing a lecture delivered by a highly educated Cherokee Indian on the manners and customs of the various Indian tribes of North America. During the course of his remarks, he stated that when he came to study the Hebrew language, he was astonished to find so much of his own language that was pure Hebrew. And after enumerating the various words of his own language that were Hebrew, he found them to exceed 50. So there was many Hebrew words that were still preserved within the Indian tribes. Reading on, and said he, we were taught this by our ancestors, and they received it from their Hebrew ancestors, the 10 tribes. So they noted what? That we come from the 10 tribes and learned this Hebrew language from them. Those are our ancestors. Let's go to the next slide. On the page to the left, you read what? The highlighted part. It says, that to watch Slakia. Let me see. Should I read up? Yeah, we'll read up a little bit. Reverend James S. Milligan writes from Argyll, NY, May 13th, 1853, to a friend in Allegheny, PA. Allegheny, PA. Slakia. Having in my possession a very curious relic or facsimile of a relic of that ancient nation, the Jews, I take the liberty of addressing you in reference to it in order that I and others may have the benefit of your opinion concerning it. That to which I refer is the facsimile in block 10 of a silver coin found last summer in Michigan, about 20 miles from Detroit. Shout out to Detroit, LOI. Right? 2 feet under the surface of the earth. The coin is about the size of an American dollar, not so great in circumference, but thicker. Reading on, watch this. On one side is represented, slack is, I gotta kind of zoom in. On one side is represented a censer with smoking incense with a Hebrew inscription. Now, we know that the symbol of incense as well, and incense period in the scriptures is big. It's something that we use in our customs, right? With a Hebrew inscription, Jewish shekel. On the other also is a Hebrew inscription, quote, the Holy Jerusalem, unquote. So they're finding coins within Indian tribes which have Hebrew inscriptions. And one of the Hebrew inscriptions says the Holy Jerusalem. Now, when you dig further into these coins, these are not new coins they made up on this side of the world. These are ancient coins, and they just took the habit and brought it over here and made their coins over here, because Israelites was making those kind of coins back in the day as well, back in the Persian Empire. Okay, but let's read on. The Holy Jerusalem with a representation of an olive tree or perhaps palm tree. That was another symbol that we use as well, the olive tree. Reading on, the original piece found in possession of Dr. Duffield, Detroit, is it not more than possible that this shekel of Israel was was lost by Indians? And is it not another evidence that they were descendants of the 10 tribes? Right, because you find in Hebrew inscription, you find an inscription that says the Holy Jerusalem. Why would the Native Americans call Jerusalem holy or even mention Jerusalem, regarding it as a place of high status or of high regard, if they're not attached in any way, shape, or form to that land? Reading on, here follows the remarks of his friend. The relic is plainly Israelitish. No, it's definitely Israelite, right? It ain't Israelitish, but we get what they say, right? The facsimile represents accurately the silver shekel of Israel. It was worth 50 cents of our money. Our silver $half is nearly half an ounce. A voidrupis, slaki, I butchered that word, right? But reading on, the shekel of Israel was known in Persia. So this specific shekel was known in Persia, and that's why you'll see a lot of customs with the Native Americans, like some of the Assyrian idols and gods that they worship. They got influenced by Assyria, right? The Assyrians is the one that imposed that influence on them, and they brought that habit over here, which is why the Most High had a problem with us and allowed us to fall into the hands of our enemies and fulfill the curses as well. Okay, reading on, it is mentioned in Sexton's Anabasis, right? This relic has been discovered. You know what? Y'all can read the rest, right? Because I want to just those highlighted parts. We're going just into the language right now. So we're going to go into some of the words that they have, right? You see Jehovah. They pronounced it as Yehovah, right? You see man or chief-ish, right? Now, just even us, right? We know the Most High's name is Yahweh. We know that later on, the natives also took the Hebrew tongue and kind of made their own dialects and added their own certain, taste to it. But they still kept the principle of the language. So they called them Yehovah. And of course, in English, we would call them what? Jehovah. Let's go to the next slide. So other words is Yehovah, which is also referencing Jehovah, but referring to him as the great first cause. So they use the same name to describe him as a different characteristic, right? This case being the first great cause. Hallelujah. Praise the first cause. Why are they saying hallelujah? That's the word that Israelites use, right? When we praise the Most High, the Creator. The word for father, they use Abba. So far we're seeing what? It can't be a coincidence. And I'm just going to key words that we all know, right? Abe, derived from Abeli or Abel, Abel. Okay, another name for God, Elohim or Ale, as an abbreviation. Just some of the words. Let's go to the next slide. So Columbus had a Hebrew interpreter. Okay, did I miss something? No, I didn't miss something. Columbus had a Hebrew interpreter. It says Columbus' first crew included several conversions or Spanish Jewish converts to Christianity, especially the interpreter Luis Torres. When it became apparent that the new countries lay in the West, not at the top of Asia, Jewish writers joined the European intellectuals in speculating about the character and history of the place. So far we're seeing what? That Christopher Columbus had interpreters with him. Okay, and now Luis Torres was crucial for Christopher Columbus' voyage. Why? Because he was the one that knew Hebrew. Right? Columbus knew he was on the side of the world. Right? From documents that I've read, he's read the account of Esdras and realized that the 10 tribes was over here. At that time, too, guess what? They was also looking for resources because their land was dry as hell. Why do you think they went resource hungry when they came over here, seeing all the gold, all the riches that the land had? And they was thirsty for it because back at home, they was drying up. So reading on, it says, Columbus included the Torres because the Torres spoke Hebrew. Columbus obviously believed or wanted to believe that he would meet Hebrew-speaking Jews when he reached the other side of the world. Columbus believed that he would find 10 tribes of Israel there, and from there he thought that he would need a Hebrew speaker. right? Again, fulfilling the curse, Deuteronomy 28:49, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, right? And he's coming from the far ends of the earth, not Africa, into Jerusalem or anything like that, anything in that close proximity. It says the other end of the earth, right? From the far end of the earth. And at that time, guess what? The West was considered the far end of the earth, just like the East at that time to the West was considered the far end of the earth, and it still is now. All right, so let's go to the next slide. More proof that natives spoke Hebrew. So this is a book called Christopher Columbus and the Participation of the Jews in the Spanish and Portuguese Discoveries by Dr. M. Kaseling, right? So we're going to read page 90. So among the explorers' companions whose names have come down to us, the complete list is lost. There were several men of Jewish stock. For example, Luis de Torres, the same one we just read about, a Jew who had occupied a position under the governor of Murcia, who was baptized shortly before Columbus sailed. And again, Luis de Torres was key in this voyage because to the assumption of Christopher Columbus, there were Jews over here, specifically the 10 tribes who would speak Hebrew. And he would only speak Spanish, right, and not even know Hebrew. So he needed an interpreter. Reading on, it says, as he understood Hebrew, Chaldee, and some Aramaic, Columbus employed him as interpreter. Right, let's go to the next slide. So reading on from the previous page, it said, when the fleet, whose crew was a very mixed body of men, Spaniards, Moors, and Jews, as well as Irishmen and Genoese. Now, Moors, yes, they had so-called Negroes in there, so-called blacks. Right, that's why you always hear people, a lot of Israelites saying that Christopher Columbus had Moors during his voyage, and that's true. And he needed them for what? For interpretation purposes, translation. And also at that time, guess what? The Spaniards was kicking the Moors out of Spain. So he felt, all right, let me just use some of these Moors to my advantage, right? To my gain for my agenda. So that's what was going on at that time. So let's go on to the next slide. Page 98. Of more interest than the mode of migration is the question whether any analogies in language, in traditions, in religious conceptions, or in religious ceremonies justify the acceptance of this ethnological theory. Rodin's chief argument in support of his view is the language of the Indians in Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, and the adjoining islands, meaning the rest of the Caribbean islands. He contends that it has many resemblances to Hebrew. In fact, he even calls it corrupted Hebrew. He asserts that the names such as Cuba and Haiti are Hebrew and that they were first applied by the earliest caciques, the chiefs or leaders who discovered and peopled the islands. So even in the dialect, right, you got these Jewish people who know Hebrew that can tell that their language derived from actual Hebrew. Okay, reading on. The names of rivers and persons in use among the natives are derived from the Hebrew. For example, Haina. Haina is called, it's like a Haina from the Hebrew, Ain, stream, Jonas from Jonah, Yake from Jacob, Urez from Urias, Siabao from Seba, Maisi from Moses, right? The names of their tools of their little canoes or Kansas, the name oxy for pepper, the name of the storehouse for maize, grain, and the like, all point to the Hebrew language. Their rites and ceremonies, as well as their language, form one main argument in favor of this theory of descent. Now watch this. Circumcision prevailed among the Indians. Circumcision prevailed among the Indians. Where did they get that circumcision ritual from? From being an Israelite, from receiving the law, statutes, and commandments from Moses back in the day and receiving it, right, and passing it down orally and traditionally. That's how. So even circumcision was practiced amongst Indians, which is an Israelite custom. Let's go to the next slide. Again, 800 Hebrew stones found in Puerto Rico. Once again, people might have seen this already. Some of us might have not. So let's go to these websites. Because again, it's all addressing the foolery. Right? It's all addressing the foolery. So certain parts which I didn't go over in part 1, we're going over today. So we're going to this website and we're going to read about these 800 stones with Hebrew inscription that was found in Puerto Rico. Right? Because that's another thing. How do you refute that? Right? How do you refute these 800 stones found in Puerto Rico and authenticated? Right? So archaeologyworld.com, we'll go down a little bit, get to the key points. It says 800 ancient stones with Hebrew writings in Puerto Rico authenticated. Right? Let's go down. The objects were flown to Israel for analysis at the Useware Analysis Laboratory of the University of Haifa's Zinman Institute of Archaeology, which specializes in revealing how various objects were made, what tools were used to make them, and the era of techniques and tools used. Lab director Iris Groman Yaroslavsky, I don't know what the hell is it. Name is off, confirmed that the objects were carved in the 16th century, and she discovered evidence that some of the objects were coated in gold and red paint. Quote, "This is definitely one of the strangest and most fascinating stories I've been involved in." Groman, I'm going to just say Yado for abbreviation. Groman Yado said, "To date, we have not found any similar carved stone art objects from this region of America, and many researchers assume that they must be fake. However, the microscopic tests we perform show beyond any doubt that the stones were carved around 600 years ago." Okay, because when you also get into history, you start to find out that there were certain tools used back then. There were certain things that was used back then that we'll call ancient methods now. Right? We have all this high technology now, so a lot of times our people, it's hard for them to relate to that. But back in the day, we had certain tools that we use, and when you fit certain things into certain parts of history, you can see and correlate the two. Right? So let's go on. It says the story of these objects, as the known as the Library of Aguebana, sounds like the plot of Indiana Jones movie. Yeah, whatever. Right? So, reading on, 19th century, a Puerto Rican monk by the name of Jose Maria Nazario presented a collection of some 800 carved stone statuettes. Some had human form, while others appeared to be artistic or ritual items. Many were engraved with a previously unknown form of writing. Now we know 800 of them at least more than 800, because there was more found, was Hebrew inscription. Right? That's we'll read this story in the other part, because I want to read the other article too, just to show y'all that we also knew the Most High's name. We were in tune with the Most High's name. Right? We had abbreviations. I was going to give it away, but we just read the article for that. But we had abbreviations, yet and still we knew what the Most High's name was. We was keeping the law. You see, we kept the law of circumcision. That's another thing. Right? We had the language. We're reading that now. So again, 800 stones found with Hebrew writing in Puerto Rico authenticated. Now reading, it says a remnant of ancient stones, 20 of 800, made its way halfway across the world, solving a 3,500-year-old mystery. Right? What did these stones whisper about the pre-Columbian indigenous people of the island of Puerto Rico? Like so-called Puerto Ricans, so-called Boricua, so-called Tainos. After rigorous academic testing, anthropologists, historians, academics, and millions of Puerto Ricans finally have scientific evidence that reveals the language of the story. So again, anybody that want to actually disagree with the information being brought forth. Don't disagree with me because you hate Native Americans, you dislike us, you dislike Latinos, you might have gotten into some beef with them in high school, so on and so forth, so you're holding a grudge, right? It's also vice versa. You got Latinos who beef with so-called Negroes and hold that grudge too. So that's part of the prophecy of Israel being broken, right? Separating the brotherhood. The two sticks being broken, but in these last days will be joined together. So reading on, it says, growing up in the mountains of Borinquen, Puerto Rico. Now, side note, Borinquen means the land of the one and noble Lord. showing that they believed in one God, right? Even though they might have mixed paganism with it and, had carvings of other gods, guess what? They still acknowledged the Most High God as being the one supreme, right? Now you have some other tribe that wasn't keeping paganistic customs that acknowledged the Most High, right? But I'll bring that up later. So growing up in the mountains of Borica in Puerto Rico, my grandfather told me about some very unique stones which were part of our ancient Taino Indian history. These rare stories were in the care of one of our greatest principal chiefs, Cacique Aguaybana, who, when Columbus stumbled across our Taino people in 1492, was the principal chief of my home island of Borinquen, Puerto Rico. Reading on, knowledge of these stones first came to light when a very sick Taino woman who had tried everything from indigenous herbal remedies to ceremonies lay on her deathbed. Compelled to tell a secret her family had carried for generations, she sent runners to find someone in the church who would listen. Why she chose the church, we'll never know, but a monk named Jose Maria Nazario y Cancel came to her beside. Let me scroll down. What this elder revealed to this monk changed the historical narrative of our precious island. Now, this is where it gets good, right? So, let me see. Right, so there in her tiny bohio, thatched roof home, the monk interceded for the old woman's healing. Then she told him her family secret, a secret that went back to the time of Cacique Aguaybana, the principal chief of Borinque, the Taino Indian from Puerto Rico, which means the house of the great and valiant Lord. You see that? We acknowledge one great Lord. We just read how we call them Yahweh or even Yehovah, right? We call them Yehovah, and we still was in tune, but we're going to see what else we call them. Her secret revealed to find a hidden stash of stone figurines inscribed with the strange symbols and carvings of an ancient people that some called Hibaro. Now, when you look up that word Hibaro, it comes from the word Hebreos. I think from the Hebrew is Abaryath. Okay, so it's all connected. Now, a Hibaro is known, is Puerto Ricans and Tainos known to be living in the mountains because they don't want to be influenced by the city life. And it's also going back to slavery. When you read about Christopher Columbus, he pushed us to the mountains and we remained there. So he called us Hibaros as well because he knew we were Hebrews. Okay. Reading on, who had lived in the mountains of the island and still have descendants who call themselves by this name to this day. Now, nowadays, Hibaros is more like they modernized how to use it. So it's basically somebody who doesn't have as much education as a European or American here in America, right? We're looked at as low level class, like these, we ain't nobody. So in modern times, they'll use Hibaro to kind of denote that. But the original use as well was Hebrews who were living in the mountains. Hebreos viviendo la montaña. That's the original meaning of where it came from, right? So reading on. Nazario had been educated at the University of Salamanca. His studies had included ancient languages as he was amazed at what he saw. After comparing the writing on these stones to others from around the world, he came to this conclusion. The writing was a form of ancient Hebrew. Because of his religious background, this fueled the possibility that a remnant of the lost tribes of Israel has settled on this land. That's the tribe of Ephraim, baby. Right? That's the tribe of Ephraim all the way. Now, here's where we get more into the Most High's name. In 1893, Nazario wrote a short article titled Escritura Aborigen de Caribe, which means Aboriginal Writing of the Carib, in which he explained his interpretations of these writings. After a thorough analysis of the stones and their inscriptions, he dismissed an Arawak Taino language origin, and by 1897, he concluded that the writings were more reminiscent of ancient Hebrew, meaning that we didn't create no original language. We always created our own language within the Hebrew dialect. That's why there's so many similarities from the Hebrews that, from the Hebrew words we mixed up, still kept the principles to exact Hebrew words, right? As we went some of the words earlier. Comparing this discovery with the spoken Taino language of his day, Nazario discerned words in the Taino Arawak language that were Semitic in origin and pronunciation. One example, is the Taino name for the supreme spirit of spirits, Yah. I mean, come on, son. What are we doing here, right? We know in the book of Psalm, even you could read that even David called the Most High what? Yah. And we read in here that Tainos, we call the Most High Yah as an abbreviation of what? Yahweh. Right? Reading on. By comparison, the God of the monotheistic Hebrew culture is known by the abbreviated form of his sacred name, Yah. Right? Let me see this anymore, or should I? Yeah, I think that's it, right? You could actually go to this website. You can see it on the slide or whatever, or actually on the screen being shared. Go to the website, read more up on it. But I got the key points. So we've seen the Hebrew being within our people, the Tainos. We've seen this dialect being used within the Native Americans. I forgot what the white boy said. What is there something we're missing here? Oh man! So I want the people that disagree, refute this. Make us, whatever you do, make a class refuting this specific information that I'm bringing out today. Okay, let's go on. So we're still gonna, we're still addressing the folly, unfortunately, right? Because there's a couple of things to hit on, but it's also for the edification of the people. Some people might have these questions sincerely. Some people just have these questions maliciously because they don't want to believe the facts that's brought to them. So the next thing he says on the comment board in the video, it says, additionally, the children of Israel are in the land of their enemies. How does this fit Native Americans, Latinos, since they did not come to the America, aka Babylon, by force? They were either already here or came here voluntarily. Now, we read earlier how America is the land of our refuge, right? We're refugees here. We were fleeing Assyrian captivity. A refugee meaning what? Fleeing war, violence, conflict, and all that. We had all of that in Assyria, so we fled over here, and we inhabited this land, a land which mankind never dwelt in. Okay, so that's the first thing. We didn't come over here, or actually, we didn't start off here. Right? We was forced to leave. Why? Because who's going to stay in persecution? If you're about to be killed, you're going to stay there, you're going to leave. So you want to be technical? Yes, we were forced, because if we was in peace, we would have stood there. Okay, so we didn't come over here voluntarily. We had to flee persecution. Now, I wrote what? As mentioned earlier, America was a land of refuge for the Native Americans and Latinos, and is a strange land because it is not our homeland. Any land/country we were forced to migrate as refugees are considered strange lands according to the scriptures. If you was forced to live in another land that wasn't Jerusalem, our homeland, that land was considered a strange land. Right, let's read the book of Psalm, chapter 137, verses 1 through 9. It says, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down. Yeah, we wept when we remembered Zion. So what's the topic? Zion, the actual land. Reading on. We hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. For there they that carried us away captive required of us a song, and they that wasted us required of us mirth, saying, sing us one of those songs of Zion. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? Right? If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning. See that? So the topic is the land of Jerusalem. If we was outside and forced to live outside of the land, or if we was outside of the land living because we were fleeing captivity, any kind of those situations, it was strange lands. It was considered strange. Right? Reading on. If I do, I read that already. No, I didn't. If I do not remember thee, verse 6, if I do not remember thee, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth, if I prefer not Jerusalem above my chief joy. Right? So Jerusalem is our homeland, and it is to be preferred above all other nations. But guess what? We didn't go back to our homeland. We fled persecution from the Assyrians. So we came over here. Why? Because it was that or death. That or stay under them. Reading on. Remember, O Lord, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it, even to the foundation thereof. O daughter of Babylon, who art to be destroyed. Happy shall he be that rewardeth thee as thou hast served us. Happy shall he be that taketh and dasheth thy little ones into the stones. So we know that America is also what? Modern day Babylon. So the same judgment that the Most High prophesied against ancient Babylon, he prophesied against modern Babylon. Right? In Revelation 11th chapter, 8th verse, we read that what? There's a spiritual Sodom and Egypt. Right? Same thing. All combined in one. Right? So the Most High said, well, David is expressing what? That we're supposed to remember Zion. Any land outside of Zion is a strange land to us when we're under our captors. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. When the heathens conquered any of Israel's habitation and enslaved us, it became the land of our enemies. Right? Let's read 2nd Ezra chapter 6, verse 54. And after these, Adam also, whom thou madest Lord of all thy creatures, of him come we all, and the people also whom thou hast chosen. All this have I spoken before thee, O Lord, because thou madest the world for our sake. This whole world was made for us. It's only a strange land when we're forced to live out of our homeland because of persecution. But this whole world was made for our sake. Reading on. As for the other people which also come of Adam, thou hast said that they are nothing but be like unto spittle, and hast likened the abundance of them unto a drop that falleth from a vessel. Verse 57. And now, O Lord, behold, these heathen which have ever been reputed as nothing have begun to be lords over us and to devour us. You see that? So even though the world was made for our sake, we're in strange lands right now. Why? Because these heathens are now lords over us and they're devouring us. That's what makes it the land of our enemy. What did they do to the natives when they came over here and to the so-called Latinos in the Caribbean islands? They devoured us and began to be lords over us. Therefore, now it's considered the land of our enemies. Simple. Verse 58. We, thy people, whom thou callest thy firstborn, thy only begotten, and thy fervent lover, are given into their hands. If the world now be made for our sake, once again, the whole world belongs to the children of Israel. Yes, Jerusalem is our homeland. That's home base. Right? It's like, you watch a baseball game, you at home. You watch a basketball game, you at home. You watch a football game, you at home. That means you're in your hometown. Anything outside of that, you away, right? You're the away team. But the world was still made for our sake. It reads on, it says, why do we not possess an inheritance with the world? So what's being stressed is that we don't have any land right now we can call ours because our enemies rule it. They have it in possession. Therefore, what does that equal? Us being in the land of our enemies. Right? We can't get reparations here. We can't say, give us this land back that you stole from us that we rightfully inhabited because nobody was dwelling here. We rightfully inhabited it because we was fleeing the persecution from the Assyrians, but our homeland is still Israel. The fact that they took it over and have it in possession makes it the land of our enemies, right? So reading on, how long shall this endure? So that's addressing that point right there. Right, we are in the lands of our enemies right now. Why? Because they're ruling over us. They have this land in possession, and they make their own rules. They could break their own laws. No repercussions, no consequences, no penalty. That's not the same thing with us. Right. Let's go to the next slide. So the next thing he says, right? I know, brothers and sisters, like damn, that's a lot of points, right? It's been almost an hour. We're still on tacking points. But guess what? I'm not leaving nothing unturned. Right? Because I got to address all of that. This is what confuses people in the world. This is what makes people, Israelites in Israel, hate the northern kingdom. Doctrines like this. Right? Because our people get seduced. Right? They get into some beef with the northern kingdom. Oh, you know what? I knew y'all was in Israel. Right? Some crybaby stuff. I've had experiences with people who changed doctrine. They thought we was Israel at first and then ended up going off and believing we weren't. And they got checked. Right? They got checked with history. And guess what? Dude want to call me the tribe of Judah. Like, nah, fam, keep that same energy, right? You thinking I'm not Israel, right? You know, and so he was approached. And he fell on his sword because he couldn't back up what he was saying. So let's address this next thing. By the way, were the Native Americans and Latinos enslaved in Egypt? Like the Bible said, all of the children were enslaved in Egypt, right? Ooh, see that? Somebody in the background. That's right. Yeah. Right? But we gonna address it. So just peep the comment, brothers and sisters. Were the Native Americans and Latinos enslaved in Egypt? Like the Bible said, all of the children of Israel were enslaved in Egypt. First of all, we weren't known as so-called Native Americans or Latinos at that time. There was not even an English language. So to ask that is kind of sottish, man. I'm trying to use nice words. I'm trying to use biblical words. It's kind of sottish. What is sottish? Stupid. It's a stupid question. Right? Just like I wrote here, yes, the so-called Native Americans and Latinos were enslaved in Egypt, but they were not called Native Americans or Latinos. They were called the children of Israel or the 10 tribes of Israel. There's no evidence of people called African Americans, Haitians, or Jamaicans being enslaved in Egypt. Why? Because they weren't called by those names either. You can't show me, oh, look, Jamaicans in the land of Egypt. You can't do it. You can't say, oh, look, African Americans in the land of Egypt. No, because they weren't called by those names back in the days. They were also called the children of Israel. Stupid question. How about you show me where Haitians, African Americans, or Jamaicans, those names, show me proof that that's what they was being called in Egypt and you can find them there. That's how dumb the question is, right? Moving on. If so, where is the historical evidence of their presence in Egypt? Right? We just went over that. Stupid question. And how did they get to their respective land masses that are not Africa? We went over that already too. 2nd Ezra 13 and 40. We came over here to the west side of the world, right? Approximately 722 BC. That's how we got to this side of the world. Now, let's go into something interesting. Pyramids in Mexico and Puerto Rico. Why the hell are there pyramids over there if we wasn't influenced in the land of Egypt and we weren't there in Egypt? Not only were there pyramids, but the same structure as the pyramids in Egypt was the same structure found here in Mexico and in Puerto Rico and the Americas. Let's go into the website, man. Let's go in, man. You know, sometimes it's just nonsense, man. We got to address it. Some people might fall off the truth because of that. You know what I'm saying? Let's look into this. Right, bomb. So we're on the website right now. So we're gonna see it says 10 stunning pyramids in Mexico to visit in 2023 that are all about architectural brilliance. Now look at the kind of pyramids they was finding. The same exact structure as the Egyptian pyramids. Same thing. How is that so if they wasn't influenced back in Egypt? Let's go down. Let's look at some more pyramids, right? Pyramid of the Moon, the second largest pyramid. Look at that. Just like the ones in Egypt. Same structure and everything. Another one. Right? Another one. Another one. I think I sound like DJ Khaled right now, right? Another one. Let's go down. Another one. Y'all want some more? Look, another one. We up to 7 right now. So 10, right? Let's go to 8. Let's go to 9. Let's go to 10. So how the hell were they doing these kind of pyramids with the same structure as the ones in Egypt? How? Prove you were in Egypt. Prove the existence in Egypt. Well, listen, this is part of it. This shows you what? The influence that we took and brought it over here. Okay, so let's go to the next website. I'm sharing my screen. Yeah, I'm sharing my screen. All right. A pyramid in Puerto Rico. Pyramid in Puerto Rico? Yeah, a pyramid in Puerto Rico. Right? To those who want to disagree without refuting this information. The hell is the pyramid doing in Puerto Rico? Right, let's open this real quick. Let's check out this video. You hear that? So there's been pyramids being found that the government covers up and hides from the people. Why is that? Why, if it's not that important, why are they covering these pyramids? Because they know what's the truth behind that. Right? Just keep on playing it. See that? So yeah, man. Pyramids being found in Puerto Rico, Mexico, especially in the city of Yucatan. Yucatan was one of the cities that kept the most Israelite customs in Mexico. Right? So how do you refute this? How do you do it? What's this? Let me see. What's this? I had another let me see. Which one is this one? I think it may be another site or whatever. Oh no, it's the same one, right? So yeah, that's what we found it, man. Pyramids in Puerto Rico, pyramids in Mexico. Is it a coincidence? Right? You know, there's no such thing as coincidence. The Most High is always, you know, he plans everything out. He predestined everything. So there's no such thing as not miracles. No such thing as coincidences or magic. Just came up out of nowhere. Right, let's go to the next slide. So another point, why aren't Latinos? Because this is another thing that people may I don't know if they're Israel because of this. Why aren't Latinos and Native Americans claiming to be Israelites in mass? Right, they want to see 1 million people claiming to be Israel from the Northern Kingdom, so-called Latinos, not knowing the Caribbean is a big place. You got Puerto Rico, Cuba, Argentina, Colombia, Chile. You got all parts of, people, so-called Latinos in South America and the Caribbeans. You want to see them in your neighborhood. You want to see them on YouTube, right? You go on YouTube and search up Latinos waking up. And guess what? We are waking up. You see them at camps, right? I got videos where I seen them in Colombia. Not even affiliated with camps, just a whole town of people claiming to be Israel that are so-called Latino and so-called Colombian, and they go out there in Colombia and they teach the commandments. I'll get that video and put it on the next series. But just because you don't see it, don't mean it's not happening. But let's address that, right? Right? He goes on to say, even though we lost our identity, Black Americans, aka Hebrew Israelites, are experiencing an awakening that is causing us to realize who we are and to return to the Father Yah. Why is this not happening largely in Latino and Native American people? Now let's look on the side, see what I wrote. Prophecy tells us Judah, right? Prophecy tells us Judah, Southern Kingdom, shall be raised up first. Let me fix that real quick. Right? So prophecy tells us Judah shall be raised up first, Southern Kingdom. Right? Because Judah can encompass Southern Kingdom as well, Benjamin and Levi. So Zechariah chapter 12, verse 7 says, the Lord also shall save the tents of Judah first. You're trying to skip this prophecy right now. Just by that statement or by that question. You're trying to skip this prophecy, and you want the northern kingdom to wake up on your time, not knowing northern kingdom is also scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. We read earlier in this class where they were scattered to. How you know that there's not 10 tribes over there keeping the commandments? How do you know that it's not Native Americans or Latinos keeping the commandments in the mountains? As we see that many of them who were called Hebrews or Hebrews fled to the mountains. The same thing with the other tribes. A lot of them fled to the mountains because they want to be colonized or live under the influence of a city life, keeping Israelite customs. So it says, the Lord shall save the tents of Judah first, that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah. So that's the prophecy, brothers and sisters. The southern kingdom is going to be risen up first. And right after they get risen up, guess what? They're going to raise up the northern kingdom as well. See that? It's all prophecy. So why is that not happening? Because you got your own prophecy. You got your 400-year prophecy, right? You got your own stuff. You got your own miscalculations that you got to deal with, right? Those that believe the same thing, talking to y'all too. Okay, so that's why it's not happening on a large scale, because it's not for the Most High to show you, hey, look, this is what's going on. This is what I'm doing. Nah, there's many Latinos waking up right now. I see them in different camps. I see some Latinos teaching in the Caribbean and Spanish and all that. I don't see that from what you know what? Let me say that for later. So reading on. Let's go to the next slide. Just because you may not see it in your neighborhood does not mean it is not happening in different parts of the world. There are many natives, Latinos waking up throughout the Caribbean and America. You see them in camp as well. Now, I want to bring out the book of 1 Kings chapter 19, because I'm going to show you this is the kind of spirit that, that's given off, right? This is the kind of spirit you're in when you're thinking this way. Why not on a large scale waking up? So let's read this. It says, and it was so when Elijah heard it that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entering of the cave. And behold, there came a voice unto him and said, what doest thou here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword, and I, even I, only left, right? Slack. And I, even I, only am left. So what is he saying? I don't see the northern kingdom waking up. He thinks they're not waking up. In his eyes, none of us is waking up. Right? In his eyes, just like Elijah, in his eyes, he thought he was the only one righteous that's keeping the Most High's commandments. Right? Then, Lord, I'm the only one left. I don't see nobody keeping the commandments. Everybody doing their own thing. Right? I'm saying it from the perspective of the people, that person in the comment. That's their spirit. I don't see that, Lord. I don't see that. Reading on, and they seek my life to take it away. And the Lord said unto him, go return on thy way to the wilderness of Damascus. I would challenge the brother, go to the wilderness and the mountains of the Caribbean. See if you probably see some Israelites over there keeping the customs. I could direct you. I know some places. Right? Reading on. And when thou comest, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. And Jehu, the son of Nimshi, shalt thou anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha, the son of Shaphat, of Abimelech, thou shalt anoint to be prophet in thy room. Let me jump down to verse 18. Yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel. So while Elijah was thinking that he was the only one, like, man, what's going on? I'm the only one keeping the commandments. Everybody else is off. I don't see them waking up. Yet and still, the Most High said in verse 18, yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed unto Baal, and every mouth which have not kissed him, right, or worshiping or acknowledging. That's what it's saying. So even though Elijah felt like he was the only one, guess what? The Most High raised 7,000 men from the children of Israel. He didn't see that. Just like you don't see the northern kingdom waking up, Latinos, Native Americans, because you're not in every part of the world, brother. or sister that believe this. All right, so we all waking up, right? You got Northern Kingdom right here doing a PowerPoint presentation slide, giving you information to refute that you have yet to refute, right? So let's go to the next slide. So he makes another point. It says, did you know that the big 5 tribes of Native Americans held Black Americans, aka Israelites, as slaves? The Choctaw, the Chickasaw, Cherokee, Seminole, and Creek. Now, guess what? Obviously, once again, he did not watch my last video. That's a sottish question. Stupid question, right? You didn't watch my last video because I went into this and I touched on this. Now you got to go back and watch it to find out where it's at. You do your homework, right? But now this was addressed in part 1. Ephraim and the tribes enslaved Judah in the Bible. Does that mean that they are not Israel? Read that in the book of 1 Kings, right? Ephraim and the other tribes, they enslaved Judah. They not Israelites no more? Now they heathens? Now they not the seed of Jacob? You see how stupid that sounds? Another point, Joseph was sold by his brothers. Are his brothers not Israelites? Imagine Joseph. Yeah, they sold me, man. They ain't Israelites. Imagine the children of Israel coming to Egypt when they seen Joseph. Joseph goes, y'all sold me. I ain't Israelites no more. You see how stupid that sounds? Now let's go into Buffalo Soldiers. Who were they? Because see, what happens is the foolish would contend with another. What about this? Y'all did this. Well, what about y'all? Y'all did this. What about? So what I'm going to show y'all is a piece of history y'all probably don't even know about, because guess what? If you want to play the blaming game, there's blame on both sides. If you want to be honest, there's blame on both parties. Let's go into it, right? Let's see who the Buffalo Soldiers were. And let's see, because the Buffalo Soldiers did what they did, are they Israelites? No, they're not Israelites no more, right? I guess they're not Israelites. So let's read about the Buffalo Soldiers. Right, so Buffalo Soldiers were African-American soldiers who mainly served on the western frontier following the American Civil War. In 1866, 6 all-black cavalry and infantry regiments were created after Congress passed the Army Organization Act. Their main tasks were to help control the Native Americans of the plains, capture cattle rustlers and thieves, and protect settlers. Stagecoaches, wagon trains, and railroad crews along the Western Front. Oh, I guess these brothers ain't Israelites, because they had Native Americans. They was controlling them for the slave masters. See how dumb that sounds? This is part of the curses. This is how you know it's us, because it's part of the curses, and that's part of the curses Moses said Ephraim and Judah would go through. Right, let's go down. Who were the Buffalo Soldiers? No one's known for certain why, but the soldiers of the all-black 9th and 10th cavalry regiments were dubbed Buffalo Soldiers by the Native Americans they encountered. One theory claims the nickname arose because of the soldiers' dark hair, curly hair, resembled the fur of a buffalo. Another assumption is the soldiers fought so valiantly and fiercely that the Indians revered them as they did the mighty buffalo. Let's see which one I want. Okay. Okay, so it says training the inexperienced and mostly uneducated soldiers of the 9th Cavalry was a challenging task, but the regiment was willing, able, and mostly ready to face anything when they were ordered to the unsettled landscape of West Texas. So as we read on as well in this article, you can go to it too. The Buffalo Soldiers, they didn't care what they had to do in order to help the white man capture the Native American Indians. Right? The runaway slaves from the Indians, the Buffalo Soldiers went and captured them for the slave man. And they did whatever in any condition, in hard weather, snow, rain, hot, whatever weather. They went to the extent to try to perform their job as best as possible. Let's go down. The soldiers' main mission was to secure the road from San Antonio to El Paso and restore and maintain order in areas disrupted by Native Americans, many of whom were frustrated with life on Indian reservations and broken promises by the federal government. So we had the Buffalo Soldiers helping the white man out, even while the Native Americans were living on reservations in a messed up condition. The black soldiers, facing their own form of discrimination from the U.S. government, were tasked with removing another minority group in that government's name. See that? So these soldiers, who were the so-called blacks, they were working for Esau against the natives, and even them receiving harsh treatment from the white people they were helping. Guess what? They were still removing Native Americans from their landmass, and also capturing the slave runaways. Does that make them not Israel? Do you hear me say, hey, oh, look what y'all did. You see, y'all not Israel. Y'all did this for the white man. It's part of the curses, man. That's part of the Most High said was going to happen is going to happen. That's it. Who is us to say, no, Lord, let that not happen? We broke the laws. That's the consequence. Right? Let's go. Let me see. I think this article goes a little more into it, but y'all could read it, man. Y'all could read it, right? Buffalo Soldiers didn't only battle Native Americans; they also fought wildfires and poachers in Yosemite and Sequoia National Parks, and supported the park's infrastructure. According to so basically, it was serving, man. It was, they was helping the white man out. There was catching us, capturing us. They was controlling us under the white man, right? And all that. The same thing y'all accuse the Native Americans of doing to y'all. The same thing. Doesn't mean we're not Israel. Right? So let's close that out. Let's go back to the slides. Let's go to the next slide now. So let's address his next point. He says, Arzareth is in Africa. Oh my goodness. Yeah, why y'all trying to bring Ham to the fold, man? That's one thing, man. Like, the Bible clearly says that there's a distinction between the nation of Israel and the Egyptians, the Africans, the Hamites. There's a clear distinction. Even over here in America, they show y'all no love. No love. But y'all want to try to tie in Africa with the children of Israel. But that's a problem because the Most High separated the two. So he says, Arzareth is in Africa. It was a city and region in Algeria, northwest Africa. Now, here's the issue with that. Oh, my goodness. Is this Arzareth of 2nd Nesrith 13:40-46? Is that the Arzareth that is talking about this map? Or these maps? Because that's a little clip. That's a little video of somebody. And the only thing he did was show maps. He didn't show no historical references. He didn't show no cultural resemblances. He didn't show no linguistics. He didn't show no traditions. He left all of that out. And the map says Azaroth. Now he's like, see, that's Arzareth right there. But the question is this the Arzareth of 2nd Esdras 13? If so, where is the history and sources of Northwest Africa being a land where mankind never dwelt? I'll wait. Right? If you watch anybody, the person that commented, anybody that believes this, if it's in Africa, right, Northwest Africa, where is the history and sources of Northwest Africa being a land where mankind never dwelt? You gotta show me that. Because I could easily prove that about America. But I got to leave some for y'all to prove, right? I got to leave some for y'all. I got to put something on the table for y'all to solve and come back with some answers. You look at this dude's page, he got no videos. And it's like, come on, man. That's another thing, man. Brothers and sisters, man. If you're going to talk that talk, you got to walk the walk too, man. Because at the end of the day, you click this dude's page and 0 videos, 0 subscribers. And on the comment board, he's an expert on this topic. He's an expert. He knows it. He knows what's going on, but no videos, no edification. If we need up to this person to wake up our nation, listen, America's going to go on forever. Esau's going to rule forever. But still, the foolishness has to be addressed, right? So where is the historical sources of the 10 tribes dwelling there in North Africa, Algeria, where you're pointing at to the map? Right? Where are the sources of the 10 tribes dwelling there and calling themselves Ephraim, Simeon, Issachar, Manasseh, etc., etc.? Where is that? Go back, go to that video, brothers and sisters. Go to that comment, click on that video. You'll see none of this is brought out. None. Another thing, did it take 1.5 years to get there from ships from where the 10 tribes were? Right? That's another thing. Address that too. Prove that it took 1.5 years to get where we was at from Assyria down to North Africa, Algeria. It took 1.5 years, to get there. Prove that. Another thing, is there any sources of the Hebrew language being spoken in that landmass? We just went over the Hebrew language being spoken over here in this part of the world. We showed you the language being spoken in Hebrew in the Caribbean. I showed you the Hebrew words according to history, certain words we used within our tribes that's Semitic. Can you do that with Northwest Africa, Algeria? I'll be waiting for that. For anybody that believes that, I'll be waiting, right? Yahushua might come back before that time comes, right? So, the next slide. If the 10 tribes were walking over dry land, right, for 1.5 years, because the video goes into that too. The highlighted part is what I'm addressing. If the 10 tribes were walking over dry land, what waters was the Most High holding still? Oh my goodness. If the 10 tribes were working over dry land, what waters was the Most High holding still? Is there such thing as dry water? Was it like water that's dry? You could just walk on it, you know what I mean? And just go across, the whole continent with it for 1.5 years? What is it? Right? So 2 Ezra 13 and 40. Right, let's read it again. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, who son of Manasseh, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. That's what you got to prove about that land you're talking about. Right? Because there's no as far as I'm concerned, that I've seen, there's no sources of Northwest Africa, Algeria being a whole landmass right out there for the whole 10 tribes, and it wasn't occupied. That was a land where mankind never dwelt. Reading on. That they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river. I think rivers is wet. I think so. I don't think they're dry. You could just walk on them. I don't think that's what you could do with rivers. Like, it's just a dry land, but it's called a river. Right? So it says by the narrow places of the river. That's where they entered. Right? When you look at the Euphrates, it's narrow. It's a narrow path, and it expands to the ocean, expands out. Verse 44. For the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood. He didn't say he dried up the flood. He didn't say he made it hard. He made the flood hard so they could walk on it. It said he held still, meaning what? The waters were calm. Right? The Most High didn't allow no storms to take over and blow them away. So the waters were calm. That's how the Most High held still the flood. Reading on. Till they were passed over. So when they were passed over, the Most High did us the solid to do what? He looked out. He blessed. He held still the flood. He made sure the waters was calm for us to actually pass over. Verse 45. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of 1.5 years, and the same region is called Arzareth. Right? Even if they was walking for 1.5 years, let's just argument granted, just for argument's sake, right? If that's the case, where's the evidence of that? Because I have historical evidence where the natives, they said they came from the east. I got that. I can't go over it all in one, right? Because obviously, look at this. This is already an hour and some change, right? But I got that history. Where's your history regarding the Northern Kingdom and where they came from, you know, regarding the land of Northwest Africa, Algeria? Where is that? So the Most High held still the flood, right? It says for through that country was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half. And the same region is called Arzareth. Okay, just Arzareth also meaning what? Just another land. 46. Then dwelt they there unto the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come, the highest shall stay the springs of the stream again, that they may go through. Therefore thou sowest thou the multitude with peace. So the Most High clearly lets us know they went over the waters. He held still the flood. It didn't dry up and then they went and it became a river again. It didn't do that. So now they got to present, whoever believes this doctrine got to present that evidence, not just a map, and no historical sources, no linguist, no nothing. Right, let's go to the next slide. So the last point he made, finally, right? All the folly we went through, man, it's crazy, but you got to address it. So what? So the last point he makes is, like the Lemba tribes and Ethiopian Jews, better Israel in Africa, thus the Native Americans and Latinos have DNA that traces to the Levite tribe. Don't even try to answer this question because you and I already know the answer. Man, a dude that didn't even watch the video, and a dude that's going off DNA. First of all, where in the Bible did any of our ancestors trace their lineage back to being Israel by using DNA testings? Where? Show me that in the Bible. Show me where the Most High would now give us a different a way to determine our nationality other than the seed of our fathers. Show me where. Thou shalt now take a DNA test. Thou shalt not inquire of thy father. Show me that. Because if the Most High never changes, guess what? The way we identify our lineage never changes neither. So, again, he says like the Lemba tribes and Ethiopian Jews. First of all, you don't know that Ethiopian Jews, they're converts. If you look at the history, the so-called Jewish people spread Judaism within the Ethiopians. That's why you have a lot of Ethiopian Jews coming out saying they're Jews now, because they've been converted to Judaism by Amalek, the white man. They're actually not the real Jews. So it says, does the Native Americans and Latinos have DNA that traces the Levite tribe? First of all, this is how simple that question is, because that we don't claim that the 10 tribes come from the tribe of Levi. We don't claim that. I don't teach that. I don't teach that the Puerto Ricans come from Levi. I don't teach the Mexicans come from Levi. I don't teach the Colombians come from. We don't teach that. So that's a dumb question, right? Now, one of the questions, or some of the questions I have is, who did the DNA testing? Who did this DNA testing for the Ethiopian Jews, right? Tracing it back to the Levite tribe. Another question I have, who did they compare the DNA to? Was it the actual man Levi in Genesis 49? We know that's not a fact. We know migration patterns creates a conflict with DNA testing because the original people of the lands are not living there. So even with DNA testing, you have the people that's not originally inhabiting the land somewhere else. You're testing the wrong people. But even with that, you would have to go back to the actual man Levi to get his DNA test and compare that to see if it lines up with the people today. But you don't have that. People that believe this doctrine, they don't have that DNA testing. So how are we going off DNA testing? Let's go to the next slide. Oh, you know what? We found evidence of a lizard being able to trace its ancestors through DNA. That's right. Let's play the video.
wanted to see what would happen if I sent my pet lizard DNA into 23andMe. And so with the help of my wife, we extracted enough saliva to send off in the mail. We were so excited to see the results. After about 3 months, we were shocked. My lizard was 51% Ashkenazi Jewish. He was also 48% West Asian.
See that? The lizard was Jewish, Ashkenazi Jewish, Northern West Asian, Iranian, Caucasian, and Mesopotamian. Oh, wait, West and North Africa. Probably from Algeria, right? Oh my goodness. You see how ridiculous this is, man? The damn lizard traces back to North Africa. Let's play the video.
This was really interesting. They also gave us a little bit of his background and his history.
Check that out.
Etc.
So the lizard had a diet formula too, because he got that from his ancestors. Foolishness, man. Foolishness. Man, you got, and I'm gonna address because you got new comments every day. For some reason, this topic is gonna attract those kind of comments. It's gonna attract foolery. But you have a new comment, which it was too late for me to address and put in the presentation. But they talking about we come from Japheth, and our DNA comes from Japheth, and the Asians come from Japheth, and that's why our DNA is so close together. That's nonsense, man. Guess what? This lizard, he got Asian DNA. Right there, 48.1%. So I guess he go back to Japheth. Simple, man. But that's it with him. I want to address another another folly. This will be the last one for the day. Then we'll go into some history, and then we'll end the class, right? But there's another comment. It says, if their hair isn't kinky as is Yah's hairs, then they're not Hebrew. If they're not Hebrew, they can't be the lions of Yehuda. Yehuda, let's, for argument's sake, we know that's not how you say the tribe, but Yehuda, tribe of Judah is one tribe. That reminds me of Kanye West. When he first started learning, he said the 12 tribes of Judah. That's the same mentality here. The same mentality. I think Fantasia said the same thing. The 12 tribes of Judah. That's the same mentality here. If their hair isn't kinky as Yah's hairs, then they're not Hebrew. Let's go to the Song of Solomon, chapter 3, verse 11. It says, go forth, all ye daughters of Zion. So who we talking about? We're talking about the daughters of Zion. And behold, King Solomon with the crown wherewith his mother crowned him in the day of his espousals and in the day of the gladness of his heart. There's the next chapter, literally right after the 3 and 11. Behold, thou art fair, my love. Behold, thou art fair. Thou hast dove's eyes within thy locks. That locks, right? That word, when you go into the Hebrew, it's talking about a woman veil. It ain't talking about no hair locks. You go to the Hebrew, it's talking about a veil. The same, the covering of a woman. She covered her face with a veil. That's what it's talking about. Reading on, it says, thy hair is as a flock of goats. Thy hair is as a flock of goats. Who is Solomon referring to? The daughters of Zion. Why? Because their hair come in different forms and textures, just like the children of Israel. There's nowhere in the Bible where it says, if thou hast kinky hair, thou art surely Israel. Guess what? The Africans, the Hamites, they have what you call so-called kinky hair. They're not Israel. So your hair texture does not determine if you're Israel or not. That's stupid. I want to say childish, but god damn it, it's just too dumb, man. Sometimes it's just stupid comments. So we see in Song of Solomon, the 4th chapter, the 1st verse, that some of the daughters of Zion also have what? Goat hair. Thy hair is as a flock of goats. Let's go to the next slide. This is what a goat hair looks like. This is the hair that y'all hate. I guess Solomon was lying about the daughters of Israel. I guess the daughters of Zion don't have goat hair. A lot of y'all would call this straight hair, white man hair, right? So-called quote unquote good hair. That's what our people call it in the world, which we both got good hair, whether it's, woolly or whether it's of goat, right? Whether it's a sheep or whether it's of goat, we got good hair. So this is what goat hair looks like, brothers and sisters. Yet and still, you still got people believing that your hair texture determines your nationality. One believes that DNA determines your nationality. The other one says that your hair texture determines it. You see the confusion in this doctrine? Back in the biblical times, guess what? There was no conflict on physical appearance because everybody besides Esau was a melanated people. We didn't have that problem back then. Oh, I don't know. You don't look a certain way. We didn't have that problem. We knew who we were. Right? When you look at, the white man, I think, I forgot his name. He brought that doctrine in the 1800s. He brought the colorism in. He brought the separation. He brought, that concept of not verbatim, but separate them by color and hair texture. Right? So, goat hair we see in the scriptures is also described as the daughters of Zion having it. Right? We see the daughters of Zion also have what you call straight hair or goat hair. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So now we're done with the folly. That was a quick cut right there. I didn't want to, that's straight to the point. So we're going into some more history now, right? More prophecies, more the conditions of Native Americans, Latinos, showing that we went through the curses as well, and we're still going through it. Right, so Deuteronomy 28:50 says, "A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young." As you see the arrow pointing up, in this book it says, the misery also extended to the Indians who stayed behind in the villages. You know what? Let me read the top part. "The greed of men is insatiable," commented Gonzalo Fernandez de Oviedo. "Some owners gave excessive work to the Indians, and others provided them with too little food. So the Indians weren't even receiving enough food to survive to be able to work any kind of work or any laborers' work, especially forced labor, because that's another thing that they put us through, forced labor." Reading on, contemporaries spoke of quebrantamiento, the breaking down of the body, turning laborers into walking cadavers, stripped of the will to continue living. Such merciless exploitation was compounded by the constant shifts from one encomendero, meaning commander in Spanish, to another, one more covetous than the previous one. See that? So that goes into what? Being personal properties as well, as we brought out earlier, chattel slavery. The encomiendas were granted at Ovondo's pleasure and lasted 3 years or less. Thus, owners had incentive to get the most out of their Indians, even if that meant passing on famished and exhausted workers to the next encomendero, who repeated the cycle of exploitation with renewed rigor. Okay, not regarding the person of the young or show favor to the young. Let's read that. "The misery also extended to the Indians who stayed behind in the villages, the elderly, children, pregnant women, and others who were somehow unsuitable for arduous works in the mines. With all the able-bodied adults gone, they can now raise enough food for themselves, let alone for these scores of men and women returning from the gold fields. Widespread famines affected the island during Ovondo's years, and what little food existed was sent to the gold mines. Even the Indian villages given the pass by Governor Ovando failed." So we see here, this is a harsh working condition. The conditions they had us in, the kind of works they had us doing, it wasn't, we was basically killing ourselves. We were starving to death. A lot of us dropped. They didn't make it back home to feed the grandmothers and the grandchildren who weren't able to work. So guess what? As a result, an extension, they starved as well. They didn't have food to survive. Reading on, it says, If they have a lot of meat or fish, they eat them day and night without anticipating the future and realizing that tomorrow they will not have anything. Okay, so let's go to the next slide real quick. Same thing, more horrible working conditions. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 30. Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and thou shalt not gather the grapes thereof. So let's read this book, right? Let alone for the scores of men and women returning from the gold fields, widespread famines affected the island, right? That's what we read. Right, widespread famines. Now we go to the bottom. It says, Pietro Martire, right? Martire, I don't know the last name, whatever. Dangiera expressed the same idea. Let us be strictly truthful and add that the craze for gold was the cause of their destruction, he wrote to the Pope. For these people who were accustomed, as soon as they had sown their fields, to play, dance, and sing and chase rabbits, were set mercilessly to work. See that? So we were a people who we sold out, vegetables, our crops in the field, and we'll go play while it grows. But now we're subjected to merciless work. That's Deuteronomy 28 and 30, as well as Deuteronomy 28:16. It says what? Cursed shall thou be in the city, and cursed shall thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind and the flocks of thy sheep. Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. This is all prophecy, man. That's what we're reading. The conditions of so-called Latinos and Native Americans fulfilling the curses. So reading on in the book, it says, by 1508 to 1509, the surviving islanders could no longer sustain the gold production of Cibao, let alone raise food, build towns for the Spaniards, and do all the other work required of them. See that? Even when we built, the scripture says, what? We shall build a house, but thou shalt not dwell therein. See that? We built it for the Spaniards because that was forced labor. Ovando himself, realizing the depth of the crisis and the failure of his policies, proposed a dramatic and far-reaching solution. Bring Indian slaves from the surrounding islands to work in the gold mines and other endeavors of Hispaniola. So that was his new plan. These dudes are dying off. Bring some more Indians from the surrounding islands. Is that pleasant? Is that something that we wanted to go through? Not at all. Is that part of being scattered from one end to the earth to the other? Yeah. Why? Because we was also scattered locally and globally. Reading on, a new chapter in sad history of the early Caribbean had begun. So that's the sad history that most people forget to read about. That's why we call the forgotten people. That's why we're also called spiritually. If you look at it, we're called the lost tribes of Israel. Right? They ain't even talking about us no more. They ain't even talking about 1492. They ain't even talking about how Christopher Columbus did us dirty. And they lied to us by saying we extinct in order not to go back to that history and talk about it. They don't want to remind us about that. They don't want to spark that mind up that would start a revolution, or, right, they're afraid of the next Messiah coming. You know what I mean? That's, Edgar Hoover and all that. So, yeah, man, it's a plot against us. If we go to the next slide, might be the last one. Let's see. Yeah, we'll be the last one, then we'll get into some more of this next time. This series it's going to be like a 20-part series, y'all. I'm sorry. Right? This is going to be like a 20. Not back to back. We're going to get into some other lessons. Next week we'll switch it up a little bit. We're going to come right back to this in the other lessons as well. Because it's going to be like a 20-part series, even more. And I still got books that I have not uncovered. That's pages of information that I got to, take pictures of and put it in the slide. So that's another portion of the work. Putting these slides together, man, it takes up your time, but guess what? It's worth it for the edification of the people. We love doing it. We love serving the Most High and giving this information out, even if it means what? Crushing false doctrine, right? Because that's one of the things. We got to crush the false doctrines out there too, because if our people get a hold of it and they're not even accustomed to the milk, the meat might, make them choke. So let's read this slide. It says, Europeans killed natives with diseases. Okay, so smallpox was an unknown disease not only in the 16th century Mexico, but in all the Americas. Before the arrival of Europeans, people in the Americas had not yet been exposed to the type of diseases that plagued the East, which meant that they had no resistance or immunity against them. It was introduced to Mexican lands by the Spanish and played a significant role in the downfall of the Aztec Empire. Hernan Cortez departed from Cuba and arrived in Mexico in 1519, sent to start trade relations on the Veracruz coast. However, he disobeyed the Cuban governor and began to invade the mainland. Skipping a little bit, Narvaez's forces had at least one active cause of smallpox when the Narvaez expedition stopped at Cozumel and Veracruz in 1520. The disease gained a foothold in the region. Native Americans often contracted infectious diseases through trading and exploration contacts with Europeans, and these were transmitted far from the sources and colonial settlements through exclusively Native American trading transactions. So we was getting these diseases from the Europeans that we came in contact with, that we traded goods with, that we was even next to. That's how filthy the Europeans were and still are, right? At that time as well. So, this is how destroyed our people are, the so-called Latinos, right? I had a Latino tell me that the Indians were actually savages and the white people were the civil ones. A Latino told me that. You telling me we're not destroyed as a people? They don't look at white man as God? Come on, man, right? It's part of the curses. So reading on, it says warfare and enslavement also contributed to disease transmission. Deuteronomy 28:21 says, the Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee until he hath consumed thee from off the land whither thou goest to possess it. The Lord shall smite thee with a consumption and a fever and with an inflammation and with an extreme burning, with the sword and with the blasting and with the mildew, and they shall pursue thee until thou be destroyed. And America was the land that we possessed, right? Because that was the land that Ezra said no man ever dwelt in, right? So yes, we went through these curses too. So you see that the epidemic of diseases was a big thing in the warfare going on. It was actually killing us off, and that's what the Lord says also in the other prophecies, you shall be left few in numbers because of these diseases. That's all prophecy, right? So yeah, we'll stop there for today, brothers and sisters. Most I will. If next week I'm not busy, I'll come back and do the another part. But I hope brothers and sisters got edified, right? Because you're gonna have a lot of doctrines come at you, and you're gonna have to be able to defend it. That's right. You're gonna have to defend your Northern Kingdom brothers and sisters. That's right. And our job is to defend y'all too. You see what I'm saying? So we defend each other, and we fulfill the prophecy of the unity and working towards that kingdom together, right? So, it's important we do that together, Israel, right? So all praise to the Most High once again. I hope brothers and sisters is having a good night, having a good day, wherever y'all at. Hope y'all blessed. Hope peace is upon y'all. Hope the Most High pour out whatever your goals is. He pours out blessings. Hope you're fulfilling your purpose out there, right? Don't stay stagnant. Do this work. Do something useful for the Most High, brothers and sisters, all right? Don't be like the people that talk and don't do nothing at all. Right, we don't perform that way as Israelites. As Israelites, our job is to do this work, sacrifice some time, sacrifice whatever you got to sacrifice for the Most High. Right, sometimes the Most High he tests you. Right, he tries you on how much sacrifice you're willing to do for him. Right, so let's do this work. Let's get right. I'm coming out with a new song soon. I'm almost finished up. I'm getting it mastered, and we're gonna come out with the video shoot. Right, my man Zaab, the elder from Lines of Israel. We're gonna go ahead and shoot that video sometime in in a week or two. Look out for that. In the meantime, I say love y'all, Israel. Shalom, kum yasha'Allah. Stay blessed, stay out of trouble. And until next time, peace.
Major move.
Alors donc
They hating on camps, acting like women with periods and cramps, but can never do what we do. It was never a part of the Most High's plan, so I understand that you as a man got a lot to go with the baby steps. You see, we militant in every step, from state to state. I see and regress. Israelites coming through. Yeah, you feel the respect, so who is you testing? You're missing your blessings. They're hating so hard, you're missing the lessons. I'm aiming the Western. And all of the clans and all of their crews, avenging the bruise, they hunger slew. A message to heathens, we coming for you. I think to myself, why have compassion when I see they actions? They laughing at us and they glad they have us at the bottom scrap before the crumbs for master. Broke the chains, now we calling our nation back to repentance, back to their essence, back to Yahweh, back to his laws and commandments. They want to be us, but they can't. The wise grow when the seed is planted. Go study the ants. The way they gather together and work as a team. I should holler my team. Extra clip with the beam. Niggas are selling their dream like they're making a scene. Always in drama, but not taking care of these seeds. But part of the game is that. Back in the days, that would've got checked, but they cut them a check. To turn their backs and honor, respect, and morals. Don't believe what they tell you. Do your due diligence. Mix intelligence with the elegance. When you do, someone consider it arrogant. I'm giving you game to put it in play. I'm feeling the rage of people enslaved. The cancerous world we see today. It's already written, it's part of the phase. But don't be phased. Gotta be strong in this faith. Gotta continue and pray and fast in the love. Cause I'm never cleaving the hate. Israel only, don't get it twisted. The other nations is on my hit list. I know they be mad whenever I spit this, but I hate them with a perfect hatred. Yeah. I rep the poor, so I'm riding for them. Anything else, I call it a sin. I shoot for the stars and aim to win. Shoot for the stars and aim to win. Shoot for the stars and aim to win. Anything else, I call it a sin. I shoot for the stars and aim to win.
Tell them we ready for war, ready for war. Yeah, we ready for war. Tell them we ready for war, ready for war. Yeah, we ready for war. Tell them we ready for war, ready for war. Yeah, we ready for war. Tell them we ready for war, ready for war.